The lighthouse that waited for everyone. There was once a lighthouse that stood on the edge of the world. Not the edge that appeared on maps, not the edge sailors feared, but the quiet edge where tired hearts eventually arrived after caring too much for too long. The lighthouse had no name. No one remembered who built it, yet every person who found it always felt as though they had been expected. Its light never flashed urgently. It breathed, slowly, patiently, like someone whispering, "You're safe now." On one unusually calm evening, when the sea looked like polished glass beneath a blanket of stars, a traveler named Elias found himself rowing toward the distant glow. He hadn't intended to. In truth, he wasn't even sure how he had reached this ocean. Life had simply become heavy. The kind of heavy no suitcase could carry. The weight of unfinished conversations, dreams quietly abandoned, people he missed, default texts, versions of himself he no longer recognized. Every day had become another page that looked exactly like the one before. And somehow, without realizing it, his small boat drifted toward the lighthouse. As Elias stepped onto the wooden dock, he expected someone to greet him. No one did. Instead, he heard waves gently touching the shore. The wind carried the scent of salt and pine. Somewhere nearby, an owl called into the darkness. The silence didn't feel empty. It felt welcoming, almost as though the island had been waiting to exhale until he arrived. The lighthouse door opened by itself. Inside was an old spiral staircase. The walls glowed with warm amber light. No lamps, no candles, just a soft golden warmth that seemed to come from the stones themselves. Halfway up the stairs sat an old woman knitting a long blue scarf. She smiled without surprise. "I wondered when you'd come." Elias frowned. "You know me?" She shook her head. "I know tired people." She handed him a steaming cup of tea. It smelled like rain after summer heat, like fresh bread, like childhood memories too gentle to explain. "What is this place?" Elias asked. She smiled. "A resting place. For travelers? For souls." She returned to her knitting. The needles clicked softly, like a quiet clock. "You may stay as long as you need. And then, you'll know when it's time to leave." Elias climbed to the very top of the lighthouse. The lantern room was unlike anything he had imagined. There was no giant lamp. Instead, thousands of tiny glass jars filled every shelf. Each jar contained a small floating light. Some glowed brightly, others shimmered faintly. Some flickered like candles. Others sparkled like galaxies. A leather journal rested on a wooden table. Its first page read, "Every light here belongs to someone who almost forgot how brightly they once shined." Curious, Elias lifted the nearest jar. Inside floated scenes from someone's life. A little girl laughing beneath autumn leaves. Father carrying his sleeping son home. Two old friends sharing soup during a snowstorm. A woman dancing alone in her kitchen after receiving good news. Ordinary moments. Small moments. Moments easily forgotten. Yet they glowed brighter than diamonds. The old woman eventually joined him upstairs. "These are memories?" She nodded. "The ones people think don't matter. They matter most." She gently placed another empty jar into his hands. "This one is yours. It's empty? Only because you've stopped looking." That night, Elias couldn't sleep. He wandered around the island. Moonlight covered everything in silver. He heard crickets singing somewhere among the grass. Fireflies drifted lazily through the trees. The sea whispered stories only waves could understand. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about tomorrow. He was simply present. As dawn approached, he remembered something. Not a grand achievement, not a life-changing victory, just a simple afternoon years ago. He had been 7. His grandfather had taught him how to skip stones across a lake. Neither of them spoke much. They simply smiled each time another stone bounced across the water. Elias had forgotten that day, completely, until now. The empty jar beside his bed suddenly filled with warm golden light. The memory floated gently inside, perfectly preserved. He stared in amazement. Over the following days, more memories returned. His mother's laugh while baking apple pie, his first snowfall, a stray dog who followed him home. the smell of old books inside a tiny library, watching rain from beneath a blanket, receiving forgiveness, giving forgiveness, tiny moments, tiny miracles. Each one became another glowing light. Soon his shelf held dozens of jars, then hundreds. The room around him became brighter, not because of electricity, because of remembrance. One evening, he asked the old woman, "Why do people forget these moments?" She looked toward the sea. "Because pain speaks loudly, but joy?" She smiled. "Joy whispers, and whispers require silence." Weeks passed, or perhaps years. Time behaved differently on the island. No clocks existed, only sunrises, sunsets, and peaceful nights. Visitors occasionally arrived. A tired musician, a nurse exhausted from years of caring for others, a widower who had forgotten how to smile, a young woman terrified of failing, a fisherman who blamed himself for storms beyond his control. None stayed forever. All left lighter. Before each visitor departed, the old woman handed them a single glowing jar. "Take this." "What is it?" "The memory you'll need most." No one ever received the same one. One afternoon, Elias finally asked, "Who are you?" The old woman laughed softly. "I've been called many things. Hope, rest, mercy, home. But names aren't important. What matters," she looked directly into his eyes, "is that someone keeps the light burning." That evening, a great storm gathered over the sea, the largest Elias had ever seen. Lightning split the sky. Rain crashed against the windows. Waves rose like mountains. Ships appeared in every direction. Lost, searching, frightened. Without hesitation, Elias climbed to the lantern room. The old woman stood beside him. "It's time." "For what?" "To keep the light alive." Together, they opened every glowing jar, not removing the memories, only letting their light shine outward. Thousands, then millions, of gentle golden lights merged into one magnificent beam stretching across the stormy ocean. It wasn't blinding. It wasn't harsh. It was comforting, warm, certain, steady. Far away, one by one, ships changed course. Fear became calm. Panic became direction. Every captain somehow knew where to sail, not because they saw the island, but because they felt hope. By sunrise, the storm was gone. The sea once again rested peacefully. The old woman smiled. "You've learned the secret. There was never magic in the lighthouse. There was only memory, kindness, love, and people willing to share their light." Elias looked across the endless ocean. He realized something astonishing. The world had never become darker. People had simply forgotten they carried light within themselves. Eventually, the morning came when Elias packed his small bag. The boat waited at the dock. "I think it's time," he said. The old woman nodded. "I know. Will I remember this place? Not completely. You'll think it was a dream. But whenever life becomes too loud, we'll feel something calling you back." She handed him one final jar. Inside glowed no memory, only a tiny flame. "What is this?" She smiled. "Your future." Elias sailed away. The lighthouse slowly disappeared into morning mist. Soon, it was gone, as though it had never existed. Years passed. Life remained imperfect. There were still losses, still mistakes, still days when the world felt unbearably heavy. But whenever Elias saw moonlight dancing on water, whenever he smelled fresh bread, whenever he heard waves rolling gently toward the shore, he remembered. Not everything, just enough. Enough to smile, enough to breathe, enough to continue. And somewhere, far beyond every map, far beyond every storm, the nameless lighthouse still stands. Its warm light continues to shine for anyone carrying invisible burdens. For anyone who feels lost, for anyone who believes they've waited too long to begin again. Perhaps one quiet evening, when your own thoughts finally become still, you'll notice a distant golden light across the sea. If you do, don't be afraid. Simply follow it. Some journeys are not meant to change where you are. They are meant to remind you who you have always been. Good night. May your heart grow lighter. May your worries become softer. May tomorrow arrive with gentle hope And may you always remember, even on the darkest nights, there is a light that has been waiting for you all along. Sleep peacefully.